Good morning, guys. This is Randy from Snap Judgments. Look, it is just about 5:30 a.m. I got up early. I'm usually up early. Got a little bit of Green Mountain coffee going, Nantucket blend. It's delicious stuff. Look, I woke up thinking about how much I had wanted to do those mock drafts yesterday, and unfortunately, the internet was not cooperating. So I thought I would do a real quick 4 round mock draft. Maybe we'll do two of them just to present multiple scenarios like I had talked about yesterday. We're doing this on the Draft Professor site. There, you could see right here, I've got this set for 4 rounds, fast speed. The draft randomness is the one thing I changed, and that's just about how many teams in the first round take a player that is not listed as BPA. This is a unique site because the draft boards for each team are user fed. So every pick that you make changes the draft board for the team. So let's go right ahead. We're going to get right into this. I'll give it a minute to load up. Working so much better than it was yesterday already. All right, start the draft here. We're not going to do any trades here. This site, I do enjoy using this site for mock drafts. I do not enjoy using the site for trades in mock drafts. I actually don't even understand. Like you see this thing here. I'm not sure. Are they trying to offer me 78? And the two later ones, I'm not entirely sure. So anyway, here we are. We're on the clock. You can see the options available to us here. We've got Dylan Thieneman right at the top, Caden McDonald on the defensive line. Akeem Mesidor should not be here, in my opinion. He's not a system fit for us. Cassius Howell, however, is. You've got Monroe Freeling, Chris Brazel. Keith Abney is an interesting prospect. Ted Hurst, Malachi Lawrence, Max Ihenekor. It's a tough name to say. Look, there are a number of good options here. The guy that I see that I would be the most interested in, I think, is Monroe Freeling right here. I also really like Dylan Thieneman. So you know what? Let's go ahead. We're going to do a scenario where we grab Thieneman. Under this scenario, we'd be bringing Hawkins back still. We'd still have Craig Woodson. We would just have a trio of safeties that would be available to us. Dylan Thieneman, I think, would eventually work his way into that top role. If we brought Hawkins back on a 1-year or 2-year deal, eventually Dylan Thieneman would probably be the top safety in that room. So let's grab him there, and we're going to see what's available to us further down the board in terms of offensive line help, tight ends, the things that we talked about on Friday. Right here, you can see there are a number of good options for us here. I really like Malachi Lawrence. He's a pass rushing edge out of UCF. Doesn't bring you a lot in the run game, but we don't ask for a lot in the run game. He's a great option. Isaiah World, a tackle out of Oregon. Listen, don't be fooled when you look him up and you see his listed measurement at like 6'8", 315. He's actually about 6'5". Colleges tend to do this. They list their players a little bigger than they are. Basketball teams do it a lot. List their players an inch or two taller than they are. It's funny. I remember watching Blue Chips, and they go in there and they're talking about they're announcing the players ahead of the game, and the one guy's like, "I'm not really 6'10". He's like, "You will be when you play here." So that's a common thing. J-Rod, Jacob Rodriguez, one of the better linebacker prospects in this draft. Look, he's a little bit limited, but he is an ideal guy for a Mike Vrabel defense. I know our offense needs help, but man, I'm tempted to go Thieneman and then Jacob Rodriguez here. There's a world, I think, and in a very realistic world where Jacob Rodriguez becomes one of the top 5 or 10 players out of this draft. And if you get him at 63, that's just an incredible value. One guy I'd also like to talk about that you can see available right here is Malachi Fields. He really made a name for himself in the Senior Bowl. If you've been following me, I've been on this guy for months. Big body, like 6'4", 6'5", 220, just rocked up muscle. This guy is a powerful player. He's one of the better run blocking wide receivers in this draft also, and a guy who is going to, like, if his teammate catches a pass, he's going to turn around and block for his teammate. He's a possession receiver. You're not gonna see a lot of speed out of him, like, in the combine coming up, but if he runs in the mid 4 5s, that's gonna be good enough. I think he probably goes day 2, for certain. There was I was getting him in, like, late round 3, sometimes round 4 at times in mock drafts prior to the Senior Bowl. Now he's been going pretty steadily at, in the second round. So, looking at this and looking back at the needs that we talked about, we picked up Monroe Freeling, and he's going to kind of be the right tackle of the future. We clearly don't need Isaiah World in this scenario. We do still need an X receiver, and Malachi Fields is incredibly interesting. But I think that I would focus on the defense. You've got to continue building this defense up. The linebacker room needs some upgrades. We saw Kenneth Walker just absolutely tear this team apart in the running game. 114 yards outside the tackles. In this particular scheme, that's what we ask the linebackers to do, is stop the run. Okay. Jacob Rodriguez is going to help with that. This is going to give us two incredible team leaders, locker room guys on the defensive side of the ball that are going to anchor this defense for years to come. Dylan Thieneman in the first round, Jacob Rodriguez in the second round. That's just good. That's just picking good football players, and that's how you build a football team. And now we're right here in the third round, and look, you can see Malachi Fields still there, right? Um, Look, he's such a good option for us. Um, Here's another guy too that I really like though, and that's Keelan Rutledge, uh, guard out of Georgia Tech. This is a mean, nasty road grading run blocker. He was a guy that they had to tell at the Senior Bowl several times to take it down a notch because his intensity was just off the charts. And then again, we see Malachi Fields here. I've talked already about him and about why he's an ideal target for this team. I'm going to go ahead and take Malachi Fields. And that's because if you look at this wide receiver chart right here at this point in time, there are not a lot of other big X type receivers that I'm particularly interested in. Bryce Lance is a bigger guy. He's about 6'3", small school experience. Every time I see his film, I feel like I'm watching like a D1 basketball player just dunk on middle school kids. I really wish Bryce Lance had seen some competition or had gone to the Senior Bowl. I don't think there's a player in this class that would have benefited more from a Senior Bowl appearance than Bryce Lance. And he didn't go. I can't explain why. Chase Roberts is another guy, bigger body, 6'4", later round prospect, BYU player. He's not bad. He's just not quite Malachi Fields level. I really like Fields here in New England. I like his fit on this team. And I think he's a great value here at 95. Moving on to the fourth round, and I'm doing 4-round mocks primarily because we have 2 fourth-round picks, so it makes it a little more fun. A lot of times you'd be doing 3-round mocks and just getting the first 2 days out of the way. But no, in this case, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to do some 3-round mocks. Now, going down the available targets here, Joshua Josephs, a good speed edge out of Tennessee. His game compares favorably to James Pierce Jr., who we saw make the news for all the wrong reasons this past weekend, but very speedy rusher out of Tennessee. He's a guy Joshua Josephs backed up for a couple years. This year, Josephs got in there into the starting lineup, and he made an impact for himself. He's still going to be a late day 2, early day 3 type pick. He's got some stuff to work on, and he's not great in the run game. But again, as we continue to say, that's not something we really need out of the edges here. So I do like Joshua Josephs as an option here. And really right now, at the round we're in and the range we're in, he's probably arguably my top option right here. I mean, he's top on the board here, and that's primarily driven by the fact that I do a lot of drafts and mock drafts on this site. So a lot of this board is driven by picks that I make. What I would like to talk about is Emil Wagner here. Emil Wagner is a probably late day 2 type prospect, maybe round 2 type prospect. Really kind of made a name for himself at the Shrine Bowl. He had a rough year at Notre Dame. He's a young kid, tall, lanky, lean a little bit. He needs to put on some weight. He weighed 295 coming into this season. At the Shrine Bowl, he weighed 310. So he's already put on 15 pounds. You add another 10, 15, 20 pounds on this guy, give him some coaching, sit him a little bit. And he is an ideal tackle of the future. Right tackle, left tackle. I'm not sure it matters. I think you could put him on either side. Um, but this guy would be an ideal tackle of the future for this team or any team, really. We already took Monroe Freeling in this particular. Oh, no, we didn't. No, we went ahead and took Dylan Thieneman in the first round. Okay, so we've got the safety, we've got the linebacker, we've got the wide receiver. You know what? We're going to go ahead and we're going to take that tackle of the future in Emil Wagner. Um, again, just a very talented prospect. He has all the physical tools, and I really like him coming into this defense. All right, and so that leaves us with our fifth and final pick of this fourth round mock draft. And I think you know what, we will probably do another one because I'd like to let you guys see the difference in targeting that safety first or something along those lines, and then we'll do something with an offensive draft because we do have the offensive picks here. We got the wide receiver, the X receiver we need, we got the tackle of the future. So there are a number of ways to go about this is, I guess, my end point. There are a number of interior offensive line players that I like throughout this class. And I think that that's what we need. I think an ideal scenario for us would be to bring in an experienced left guard, maybe a Kevin Zeitler, Joel Batonio, someone like that. Those guys are really, really near the tail end of their careers, but they've got a ton of experience. And if we're to move Jared Wilson over to center, keep Will Campbell at left tackle, we get a really experienced player between the two of them that can kind of help them learn a little bit about the NFL game. Okay. I think that would be very, very good for our future. But with that experienced guy, we've got to expect to probably retirement at some point in the relatively near future. And so with that expectation, we've got to go ahead and we've got to grab ourselves a left guard of the future. Here's a guy that I really like, Jeremiah Wright out of Auburn. I'm going to go ahead and pick him up here. He's a guy, he's like 6'3", 6'4", 340, big guy. Looked really good at the Senior Bowl, in my opinion. Looked really good in past pro sets. He had a rep at the end of the day against a rival player, LT Overton, that he absolutely dominated, drove Overton in the ground. He had a lot of talking during the Senior Bowl practices, and he really just overall showed out very well. So you look at our final hauls here, and we got that D there. Don't pay attention to the grading system. That's really inconsequential in my opinion. But if you go down this, we've got a top tier safety. Okay, Dylan Thieneman, he's the type of film room junkie and kind of obsessed with self-improvement and team improvement. I think he's the type of guy that you want to put opposite Drake May and in practices, day-to-day, stuff like that, who's really going to challenge Drake May. Then you got Jacob Rodriguez coming in there. I think he's going to raise the level of play in this linebacker group. You take the defensive snaps that Jack Gibbons is currently playing and throw Jacob Rodriguez in there. Eventually kind of, he ends up replacing Spillane, maybe that sort of thing. Malachi Fields is an X receiver, one of my top options in this draft. He is my second wide receiver for the Patriots, just because I'm looking specifically for big body guys. He's the best option behind Denzel Boston, in my opinion. We were able to pick him up at 95 here. Emil Wagner gives us a tackle of the future. I'm not sure if he'd play on the right or the left eventually. Probably depends upon what happens with Will Campbell in his second year, which I'm actually very optimistic about. There's been a lot of talk out there about his game, about the adjustments that are needed. And fortunately, most of the people that are in the know don't think that growing his arms another inch is the adjustment he needs. They think that it's about punch and timing and footwork. And Teron Armstead, who was a very good left tackle for a long time in this league, and who Will Campbell grew up watching, has actually invited Will Campbell down to Texas where he can teach him a little bit about what he should be doing. So I think that Will Campbell's future at left tackle is probably bright. That wouldn't stop me from drafting a tackle of the future. Emil Wagner, I think, eventually could step in. Morgan Moses, I think he plays out this contract. I don't think he retires. I think he plays out this contract and then he retires. So if you get 2 more seasons out of him with Emil Wagner to develop behind him, Emil Wagner is going to get a lot of reps at practice. Morgan Moses gets a lot of that rest days, stuff like that. And there's the potential of him getting actual game reps too. So, I like him as a future tackle. And then we went back to back in the offensive line in the 4th round here and picked up Jeremiah Wright, that left guard out of Auburn, to be the left guard of the future. I think this is a really productive draft. It addresses a number of needs with high quality players and, should be really impactful for years to come. Um, that said, let's dive right up in here and we're going to do a second one. All right. We're going to do something where we try to focus on the offensive side of the ball with our first 2 picks here and take a look and see what's available to us on defense later on. Or at least that's my goal going in. Sometimes, you go in and with a plan and then you're picking at 31, 30 players go before you, and you're sitting there looking at the board in the first round thinking, the only way I can really use this pick is by going after something I really wasn't planning on. All right. So the way the board fell again, we do see Dylan Thieneman there again. Caden McDonald again. Akeem Messidor. I'm not sure who's been picking him for the Patriots, but this is a terrible pick and they need to stop. What I'm going to look at here is I am going to look at the offensive line. Oh, man, it's hard not to look at wide receiver, but I do know that Malachi Fields and Jacoby Lane are likely to be there in round 2, round 3, right? So, Jennings Dunker is such a good offensive line player. I absolutely love him. I see him as the future Logan Mankins on this line. Problem is that we're just not at the right point in time to take a guy to start there. We've got Mike Onwenu on the right. We're paying him nearly $20 million a year. He's an excellent right guard. There's really no reason to move away from him. And then, like I said, on the left side, what we need right now, I think, is a vet. And I think that any rookie that we take is going to sit behind him for at least a season. You don't want to spend your first round pick on a guy who you plan on sitting for at least a year. So I love Jennings Dunker as a prospect. I don't like him as a pick for us here. What I'm going to go ahead and decide between these 2 wide receivers. We got Chris Brazzell from Tennessee, Ted Hurst from Georgia State. I'm going to make the executive decision and take Chris Brazzell here. Ted Hurst is an interesting prospect, but he's a small school wide receiver, and I'm just not 100% sold on him yet. I know people who think he has the best release in this class off the line. He's definitely a contested catch guy, and he showed out at the Senior Bowl, really made a name for himself. Chris Brazzell, on the other hand, is a guy who really made a name for himself earlier in this process. 6'5", about 200 pounds. A lot of people comp him to Christian Watson in Green Bay, which is a good comp. This kid is fast. He's got solid hands. He's not overly physical, and he's got questions about effort. A lot of people feel like he kind of takes plays off when he's not the primary target. Other people that I've spoken to feel like that's what the team asks of their wide receivers. They basically say, listen, if it's not your turn, save it for when it is your turn. So, there are questions there that would have to be answered in an interview environment. But Chris Brazzell is definitely an interesting player to pair with Drake May, who is one of the better deep ball throwers in this league. You give him a 6'5" target that's likely to run about a 4.3 40. And look, he's going to make some splash plays. Okay. Now, in this particular example, I don't exactly see a tackle or an interior offensive lineman that I'm incredibly interested in grabbing. Oh, See, I think Keelan Rutledge should still be available there later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change things up a little bit, and we're going to go with Malachi Lawrence here at edge. I talked about him briefly during the last mock that we just did before this, but this guy has a prototypical edge rusher body. All right, 6'5", 245, 250, 35-inch arms. Now, there's a little bit of question there. They were reported to be confirmed 35-inch arms at spring measurements. And then he showed up at was it the Senior Bowl or the Shrine Bowl he went to? Anyway, he showed up at one of those bowl games and they measured and it was 33 and a half. So not that it's like, look, ultimately it's an inch and a half each arm, 3 inches total, right? So that is an impactful amount. Don't get me wrong. It's not the end of the world, but it's just not any longer like the prototypical perfect if you drew him up pass rusher type of body, right? Um, Still an incredibly talented player, really fast get off, good bend, gets after the quarterback, not great in the run game, but we don't need that here. Malachi Lawrence becomes a Patriot here at pick 63. And Matt, he comes in and I think he gets right into the pass rush rotation. He certainly leapfrogs Braden Swinson. He probably leapfrogs Elijah Ponder as well. Gets in there, gives Landry some rest. Gets in there on practice reps when Landry's not there. He could definitely be an impactful player for this team. All right, we're going to take a look here. Oh, see, my guy Keelan Rutledge did go off the board. Jacoby Lane's off the board there at 93. Malachi Fields at 90. It's a really good thing we attacked wide receiver early in this draft, isn't it? So we're going to be looking for a number of different things here. Oh, see, we got our boy Emil Wagner there, tackle of the future. We're going to go ahead. I think we're going to go ahead and take him here at 95. And this just kind of, again, goes to show there are, a number of ways of doing this where you get the things that you need. You know what? We could take a look at this too. Let's do this real quick instead. I've talked all week long, for like half the season about the possibility of trading Christian Barmore. Daryl Jackson Jr. would make an incredibly good fit alongside Milton Williams. There just aren't a lot of humans that are built like Daryl Jackson Jr. is. Okay, 6'5", 330, 35-inch arms, 10.5-inch mitts. This guy is just he is perfectly crafted to play the defensive tackle position. He needs some coaching, and I think this is the place to get it. Playing alongside Milton Williams. Milton Williams is not going to let him not be good. Okay. We drafted his college teammate from last year, Joshua Farmer, here in last year's draft, round 5. Daryl Jackson Jr. would make an interesting fit. And if we did trade Christian Barmore for a day 2 pick, this is exactly the kind of range that you could look at getting someone like Daryl Jackson Jr. to replace that on that line. There's another couple interesting guys here, one of them being Hezekiah Massis, California cornerback. Look, we like California defensive backs. Both Jalen Hawkins and Craig Woodson went to Cal. Ezekiel Massis is an interesting cornerback prospect. We need some depth in that room. I don't think I'd want to take it here. This is our 3rd pick. We've taken a wide receiver and an edge. What we really need is offensive line help. We need offensive line youth. And, despite the fact we did this in the last mock, we're going to go ahead and take Emil Wagner here at 93. He's going to be able to, again, develop into a starting tackle of the future, whether it be on the, we'll see, time will tell. But either way, it's going to be a good pick for the Pats here. Oh, look at that. Jaden Roberts flying off the board. I really like him as an interior offensive line prospect. All right. So again, Chris Brazzell, Malachi Lawrence, Emil Wagner, wide receiver edge, offensive tackle. Now, here's a situation where we've got a player falling here to 125 that I am really a big fan of, and that's Kyle Lewis. He is a guy who is going to test the meaning of the word tweener. And I mean that in that, sometimes you use the word tweener to mean somebody who can do a little bit of everything from multiple positions. And sometimes the word tweener is used almost like an insult, and it means somebody who just doesn't have any position. Kyle Lewis is an excellent coverage linebacker. I think he's exactly the type of guy who could shut down the opposing team's tight end, who can get in there and guard the slot. He can really move around. Little bit of a, I think a Marte Mapu type of comp. That type of skill set is what we're talking about here. Let's grab Kyle Lewis there at linebacker. And then just a few picks later here, our final pick in this mock draft. Again, Brazel, Lawrence, Wagner, Lewis. There are a few players that we could take here. One of them that I really liked, by the way, and had my eye on was Jalen Husky there, safety from Maryland. I see he went to Buffalo in this particular mock draft. And let's see, you know what? Interior offensive line is the place we need help. There are a number of options here. Okay. I like several of these guys for us. Jeremiah Wright, we talked about in the last mock. Logan Taylor out of Boston. Pat Coogan, we saw him in the national title game. He can play center too. Inez Cooper, we also saw him in the national title game. He's a right guard, good run blocker. DJ Campbell out of Texas, Parker Brailsford, very, very small center out of Alabama. We've got, let's see, J.C. Davis was a left tackle at Illinois, Micah Morris out of Georgia. He was at the Shrine Bowl. Definitely a good prospect. All right, let's see. Tight ends. Okay, here we go. Sam Roush. I really liked Sam Roush at the Senior Bowl. He came in there with questions about his ability to catch. He really dealt with a lot of poor quarterback play at Stanford. So that was a big reason for his lack of production there. I thought when he showed up at the Senior Bowl, he had a couple of really good days of practice there, really kind of answered some questions about his hands. They weren't perfect. In day 3, he kind of fell off, but he is a good prospect. He's a guy who can do a little bit of everything. He's not going to walk in the room and be the top tight end, but if we, say bring back Hooper or bring back Henry or bring back one of those two guys, he would probably be the third guy behind him, provided they sign like Isaiah Likely. So in this particular scenario, our wide receiver room next year would be Chris Brazel in the X spot, either Stephon Diggs or Kyle Williams in the Z, depending on whether or not they keep Stephon Diggs. And then you've got the slot, Pop Douglas. Kayshon Boutte would get on there in 4 wide receiver sets or potentially dispel Chris Brazel at times. Malachi Lawrence would jump right into our edge rotation. Emil Wagner would sit behind Morgan Moses for the first couple of years. Kyle Lewis would get right into the linebacker rotation, be in there primarily on coverage downs, passing downs, etc. And Sam Roush would be probably initially the third option tight end behind like Austin Hooper and maybe Isaiah Likely or Kyle Pitts, something like that. But I do think that Sam Roush could eventually work his way up that depth chart and work his way to the second spot. So look, that was a couple of different mock drafts. I wanted to bring you this morning just to present a couple different scenarios that can kind of help drive our thinking in free agency, right? The whole thing is a full plan. You're putting together a team. You're not just completing a project of a mock draft. So you really got to kind of think of all the moving parts. And, youth is great, but sometimes you don't want all youth, right? And I think we saw that in the left side of this offensive line throughout this season. We had a left tackle, we had a left guard, both rookies, both inexperienced, and both just got worked at times by stunts, loops, tricks that crafty defensive line players pull on inexperienced offensive line players. We get a little bit of experience between those guys, and I think that we really start changing the trajectory of this offensive line and the ceiling of it. Then we get a backup there, and maybe at the guard spot of the future. We kind of work the tackle in, and there are a number of things that we can do for this offensive line going into the future. But you got to think of it as a whole big picture thing. Free agency and the draft are 2 pieces of the same puzzle, and that's why we're doing this now. Going ahead from here today at noon, I'll be on a podcast going over picks 20 through 28 for the draft professors on a Mrs. R Relevant podcast. Tune into that, and then I'll be back Monday to talk about free agents. Hope you enjoyed this, guys. Have a great day.